Heyo, Fantasy NBA Today, live edition on Friday. It's the afternoon because Dan, me, has leprosy or something. I had to figure that out. I had to go to the doctor to find out what was going on, and I'm going to start a leper colony. Aaron Bruski, the songbird himself, our Friday edition guest every week. Aaron, say hello and really make it sound nice for them.
Oh.
And our two listeners left without question. I also am continuing my theme of wearing what we're calling Fun Shirt Friday here. And Aaron,
turn your camera on. I want to see this.
The camera is currently off, so the great reveal now will cometh. Is that visible? It should be Stewie Griffin, and it should say I'm a dirty, foul little boy, although it looks like the lighting's a little bit goofball. Is that obvious?
Obviously, you're covered in feces.
Yes. Well, and now we'll point the camera back, and you can see my stupid mug. Less fun, but I'll lean back so you can see just the top of Stewie Griffin's head. So Fun Shirt Friday continues. I'm Dan Baspers. This is Fantasy NBA Today. He's Aaron Bruski. At Aaron Bruski, at Dan Baspers on Twitter. You know the drill. At Hoopball Tweets. Hoop-ball.com is the website. Aaron, how you been? I haven't talked to you in a few days.
I've been great. It's holiday week. I swear every day this week felt like it was Friday. Just Twitter stuff. And I can't even really remember. Everything's been hitting so fast. You got George Karl stuff. You got, the Boogie Cousins game from, I think we talked about that a little bit. But, yeah. I mean, everything in between, it's just, I feel like there's been a different thing every 6 hours. That Grayson kid from Duke, I didn't even see what he did, but everyone wanted to talk about that. But it feels like everybody knows that nothing gets done in this week. So, they're like, well, Monday, nothing's getting done this week. So, we might as well just start drinking early. And then they get on Twitter and they tweet. And then it's like Tuesday. It's like, yeah, ain't nothing getting done this week. Let's just go ahead and we'll just start drinking early and we'll start tweeting. And that's what I think Twitter's been up to this week. That's my honest to God read on this is everybody's gone bat crazy.
Yeah, it's been a weird week. I think that the people that are hardcore focused on the fantasy stuff does actually peter out a tiny bit as everybody gets relatives in town and they take off work and people are on vacation and so forth. You go up into the mountains if you're here on the West Coast, that's a possibility. But it's been an insane week of non-fantasy news, in addition to some pretty good stuff on the fantasy side. And yes, this is a fantasy NBA show, but I want to at least dive into some of the other stuff because to some degree, Aaron, not that you and I are like a cultural barometer on this program, but the George Karl commentary is disgusting. I'm trying to clean it or sugarcoat it in some way, but this is just another case of an old man being completely out of touch with the thoughts going through his own head and somebody who's bought into the BS that's been fed to him for 65, 70 years.
It's pretty. I said it on Twitter earlier. I'm glad he's getting his just desserts right now. It's not cool watching anybody in any walk of life get kind of trashed in the media when they shouldn't be, and it's not a reflection of what you think about in this case, like DeMarcus Cousins or whatever. It's just I don't like when stuff's not accurate. I mean, I can live with criticism of anybody, including myself, if it's accurate. But the way that it works with George Karl is that he's a very media-friendly person, and you're seeing this DeMarcus Cousins story turn on its head because everybody says, "Oh, I saw the video. DeMarcus shouldn't have done that." We all agree he shouldn't have done what he did to the reporter in Sacramento. But now you're starting to see, oh wait, there's more than this just one article that everybody wanted to talk about and focus on. There's an actual 3 to 5 year history here where, prior to George Karl, it was Pete D'Alessandro playing at the strings of the media and being a media darling, and media people like people that give them stuff, that give them good quotes or give them inside scoops or whatever have you. Players are not nearly as media focused as front office people and general managers and coaches. And a lot of media, which is overwhelmingly white, I might add, they will identify with coaches who are typically more white than they will with players. I think that there's some degree of that in the media today. Whether or not that played a role here in the DeMarcus Cousins coverage, I don't know. But he's been getting railroaded for the last 3 years here in Sacramento. while at the same time doing some pretty disturbing stuff on his side, growing as a man, in the way that he deals with the media, et cetera. So there's a lot of different layers to the story, but lo and behold, leave it to George Karl to come out and have excerpts released from his book that attack players from years ago. And you saw players fire back at him. And, you've got this big discussion about George Karl now that kind of goes something like this, like, yeah, he's been working that media for a lot of years. He's worked in a lot of small markets where he's been able to get across the messages that he's wanted to. And he's burnt a lot of bridges everywhere that he's been. And so now I wonder how long it's going to take media to put one and one together and go, oh, wait, if Karl did this, with Melo and all the other guys, what's going on here in Sacramento with DeMarcus Cousins and the coverage? Does DeMarcus have a right to be upset and on a larger level than just with that one piece? And that's been the story. I've backed off of it because, trying to kind of just let it all play out on its own. But I did think that when George Karl got into this and stepped in it, so to speak, that you got a bigger picture of what's going on with the DeMarcus Cousins situation. And then he goes and he has his WWE entrance and has his moment with the media of levity. Our tweet that had that post-game coverage went viral.
By the way, you made a viral tweet. That stuff is so crazy because it's so rare and so organic when it finally happens. But Hoopball, and not to pick on Hoopball because these are our benevolent overlords here. You're the founder of it, but we're only at 3,000 followers right now because Hoopball's still young. It's in its infancy, and you got combined, I think, over 3,000 retweets and likes of one tweet, which is bonkers.
It's the biggest tweet I've seen since the old Steve Ballmer cried in a meeting and sang "Kumbaya" with Kevin Durant tweet, which was a total joke, and it was in the context of what was going on in Twitter at the time. So I still get people retweeting this tweet I tweeted about a half year ago, and they think it's serious and it sounds like it's from a sitcom, and that was the whole point of the funniness behind it. But what happened with that tweet, I just took a quick read of the mentions, is there was a lot of support for DeMarcus Cousins in that thread. And I think that, there comes a time when enough is enough, and he has a lot of growing up to do with the media and internally. And at the same time, he's this guy that's out there right now, probably as we speak. I know they got a game here in a little bit, but, he's been working with families that don't have a lot of money, getting out there and working in the community. And he's got teammates that go to bat for him. He's just got to kind of iron out the wrinkles with the way that he approaches certain situations and letting his emotions get the best of him. And a lot of people have had those issues. I've had those issues. You basically, you don't want to demonize somebody though, because they're an easy target for other motives. And that's what's happened in Sacramento. And it's just a shame. And that's been what's the backdrop of that one particular story has been this week. And, we kind of cruise into this last night of action here before Christmas Day games. And it's almost a little bit of an unofficial sort of marker in the season. I think everybody gets a little, cabin fever at this time of year. You got 14 games tonight. A lot of players are going to sit out. Yeah. I think everybody's getting ready to be with their families. And it's just wild times. Tonight will be a fun night in the NBA. It'll be a really good night on Twitter. You'll want to just kind of, if you're at home with family, you'll want to just like sneak, some coffee with some Irish cream in it, and then just go over to the corner and watch some Twitter and watch your stat tracker, because you're going to have every single player in your lineup going. And
many families, I don't think you have to sneak the Irish cream. I think that's actually built in.
You mean it's like mandatory? They're like, yeah, we don't drink coffee around here. We drink coffee with Irish cream.
You're going to have to do what I did in undergrad when I didn't want to take shots with people and just like, hey, look at that bright light over there. And then shot goes, what? Right? See, look at that. You're watching the live video. It looks like I'm pouring it in my mouth, right?
Hey, you know what? Ooh. Kids out there, learn that trick, because taking a lot of shots when you go out is dumb. It's dumb business. You're not going to survive it. You could be the biggest drinker in the world. You're not going to survive it. The over-the-shoulder toss. Yep. Make sure you don't hit anybody, but that.
Boom. You know what's also a good one? If you can't do the over-the-shoulder, if there's too many people around you, you do the sip and the quick down. Because when you put it down real quick, boom, you splash that all over the table. You drank the whole thing. It's dirty. It's sticky. Nobody's paying attention to that. These are tricks of the trades. And then, eventually you become an old man and you just suckle at a beer for an hour and a half. And that's that's life now for me at least. But let's segue actually from the goofy stuff going on with the Kings to the fantasy stuff going on with the Kings. And right now, the fantasy stuff is Rudy Gay's been out, and nobody's really been interesting. And more than anything, Darren Collison has lost a lot of his luster, maybe for the season right now. He really hasn't been that good this year.
Wait.
Him to get better, and he's been slow this year.
Wait a second. We're not going to go there, are we?
No, I mean, not necessarily for the future, but he hasn't been very good so far.
No, I'm kidding right now. And I know it's totally a fair point, and there's a lot of people frustrated with Darren Collison from a fantasy sense. And there's even some questions in Sacramento like, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? But I think what you're seeing with Darren is a problem with the starting unit. It's really hard to play when you've got Costa Koufos in the game. You got Utah beat writers that are sitting there saying, why are they playing Costa Koufos with DeMarcus Cousins? Because Rudy Gobert, perhaps the best defensive player in the league, or one of them, is just sitting in the middle of the key. He's not even moving. So if you're a Darren Collison, you're looking at that and you're going, oh, I'm going to go there. And then from there, where am I going to go? So his stats have been way down. And I think what you're also seeing then is Ty Lawson getting his minutes with the second unit, where you don't have quite as much Costa and Cousins action going on. And he's getting a little bit more spacing. So he's looking a little bit better. But the thing with Lawson is if he keeps playing the way that he's playing, that's found money for the Kings. He's got a lot of confidence right now. And that's good for them. But I don't think it will come at the expense of Darren Collison. But this is something, if they're not going to change that lineup, it was a concern I had in the preseason, was that particular lineup and that system might stifle him. And then he had a couple good games in the system. And I said, you know what? Screw it. Let's not worry about that. I think that they'll be able to negotiate that. And I didn't completely bring his projections to where I had prior to that had them, but I did bring them pretty close. Long and the short of it, it's a buy low moment. I think that the Kings have to have Darren Collison's offense working. Otherwise, they're just not going to do good. They're going to lose. And these are the Kings. They played Rajon Rondo at point guard for an entire season when it was clear 3 games into the season that he was not a good basketball player. They will continue. Dave Yeager right now is continuing to start that lineup, even though it makes 0 sense whatsoever. And then he will not play guys like Garrett Temple unless he absolutely has to. He's showing that kind of coaching stubbornness that is pretty prevalent around the league. So there is a little bit of concern that Collison could keep doing that, keep struggling, but I just really doubt it. I think he'll get it figured out. And most importantly, if the Kings start to win and he starts to really play like he's capable of, he's an early round guy. So a late early round guy. But, he has that potential. So I'm not dropping him. If anything, I'm buying low. I would buy low for any top 80 asset that I have. And that's probably where the line should be.
Yeah. I went the what you call like quarter of the way there, and I just put him on my bench in one league and let this whole thing kind of sort itself out. Because it really, I can't imagine it getting a whole lot worse than the last few ball games. He's better than that, and like you said, it's tough for him to get engaged right now because it's either dump it into Boogie in the post, and then who knows what's going to come of that? Probably DeMarcus Cousins shot or somebody else busting themselves free, or I'm trying to think back.
It's not even just him; it's also Matt Barnes. Like that lineup with Barnes and Koufos is really, really rough. Like they can't get anything done offensively. And if I'm the defense, I'm just going to take away Darren and, pray that I can cover Boogie somehow.
Yeah, somehow.
Well, he plays on the perimeter too. It's really hard for Darren Collison to get a shot off when you've got Koufos standing at the rim. And then you got Boogie standing right next to him, standing right next to Collison. It's really easy to cover. You don't have to really worry about the pick and roll because you have paint protection. So you can just kind of get up on Collison and make him get rid of the ball. And that's why his stats are so empty. You see these like 12.2 assist games.
Yeah,
there's just nothing there for him.
Really upsetting. Yeah, I thought that he would. I thought he would just sort of stumble into 5 a night.
Yeah, you would think.
There's still time. There's still plenty of time. That's another point to be made there. We're are we even a third of the way into the season yet? We're close to that. We're about a third.
About a third. Yeah, something like that.
So time yet remains, but yeah, it's that's a tough one, and I know that you've got your eye on those Kangs on a nightly basis, so to kind of watch how the drama unfurls. Couple of ball games from Thursday night, and I spent a ton of time on them outside of some injury news. Boston, Indiana, I didn't feel like anything really jumped off the page. You had kind of the usual suspects. For the most part, we're seeing a little bit more out of Kelly Olynyk lately, but in kind of limited action, which makes it tough to truly trust him. He's getting into double figures a little bit there. Is there anything in that Boston, Indiana game that jumped out at you?
Yeah, the Kelly Olynyk thing. I mean, he's getting it done for people that picked him up in a 4-game week. I mean, you have to be thrilled with what you're getting out of him. The question becomes, can he earn this? If he's a 20-minute guy going forward, then he's a top 150 guy in fantasy leagues. That means you're sitting on a top 150 guy that if something happened, heaven forbid, to somebody in front of him, and he becomes a 25-minute guy, well, now you're starting to see that top 100 upside that everybody's sort of kind of been reaching at for years and never getting. So I think that's interesting to see him do what he's doing. But beyond that, it was all very kind of standard fare. Not a whole lot to report from that side. And I would sell on Marcus Smart's line. I think we've been pretty consistent with his value this year. And then on the other side, you did see Paul George tweak an ankle. He's had ankle issues this year. He's going to play in the next one. So nothing really crazy to report there. But Jeff Teague is a sell high guy. I mean, you're not going to get a better sell high moment for a player than you are right now with Mane out, kind of mid-January-ish. And you've got a real long ramp here. I don't think people right now really understand that Mane Ellis, unless it's a serious injury, and we've got no indication right now that it is, he's going to come back. He plays through everything. And when he comes back, Teague is going to go back to being what he was before Mane left. So I don't see a lot of that kind of, there's a lot of hype about Teague right now. You could probably get a top, a top 50 player for him pretty easily in an 8-cat league. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I would look.
Golden State and Brooklyn, the Warriors kind of let him hang around a little bit. They were so Draymond Green in this one, who was attending the birth of his child. And Zaza Pachulia decided to grab all of the rebounds that Draymond left behind. The Brooklyn side, I think, from a fantasy perspective, is the slightly more interesting one because we've now seen 2, yes, not 1. I have the requisite number of fingers still, but 2 decent games from Rondé Hollis Jefferson. What do you make of that?
I think it's good. I mean, that kind of, it was weird. The Warriors are a team you hate to measure against because they play so small, and you're basically not going to see a lot of teams in the league that are like them, where they're so talented at all of those positions that teams just have to do weird stuff to defend them. And a guy like Rondé Hollis Jefferson fits into that mold with his ability to kind of downsize and upsize and be in an up and down game. But yeah, that's 2 in a row for him. And yes, you've got Jeremy Lin back. Isaiah Whitehead's dealing with his own injury. So maybe there's a little bit of offsetting there where Rondé can have consistent minutes in this 24 range. I'm not buying he's a must-own player. I think there's going to be a little bit of a logjam, and he's still going to have to negotiate his way through that. And it's probably going to be about 2 weeks before he's really on the radar as a must-own guy. Now, you could look at that and say, hey, I want to get ahead of the curve, but just realize there's going to be moments that test you in the next 2 to 3 weeks where you see the lines we were seeing a couple weeks ago, and you go, I shouldn't have picked this guy up. If you do it, you got to do it for the long haul, so to speak.
Yeah, you get that itchy trigger finger. I know I got that a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's okay. You got to
bring up Jay Ham. We don't run from our picks here at Hoopball.
18 and a half minutes, 2 points, 4 rebounds, coming in hot.
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm considering dropping him in certain spots. I don't know if this has to do with the migraines or the concussions. I've seen him pass up some shots. I've seen beat writers that I don't typically follow that have actually weighed in on this. some newer guys to the beat. They've said that there's some confidence issues there. So I don't know how much of this stuff could be concussion related. That was all speculation on my part. What's weird about it is you don't typically see him disappear like this. I think there might be some stylistic things where he's getting too reliant on spreading the floor. That could be, Kenny Atkinson thing where he's just having these guys constantly out at the 3-point line, and it starts to seep into their mentality elsewhere. So yeah, 2 points and 4 boards with no money counting stats, 18 minutes. It's just not a must-own guy anymore.
Aaron, you're a glutton for punishment. You've already taken the heat for this guy. You don't need to do it anymore.
No, but here's the thing. I'm not giving up on the value there. You got Brook Lopez. Yes, he'll play a lot of games if he's, not in one of his hurt years. I just don't see how he plays a lot of games in a year that doesn't matter for the Nets. And that alone should keep him on the fantasy radar. Yeah, if he gets back into the rhythm, then you're going to want to, get him back into a stash position on your roster.
They're not a particularly impressive ball club. I got 2 questions on the Orlando Magic roster, and they both relate to basically like what I'm going to call Vooch corollaries. That is, if Nick Vucevic gets moved, we're already seeing a smattering of Bismack Biyombo, but his percentages have been such that his value's been tanked. I mean, his free throws have been off the charts bad, and his field goal percentage is not that good. For somebody who shoots with his eyes looking straight into the orange rim, like if he moved his head any closer, he would collide with the rim, and still the ball does not go through, you'd expect a little bit better. Still, he did have 9.6 boards, a steal, and 5 blocks in his game last night, and that, to some degree, is the upside with Biyombo, because if he's playing 30 minutes and he's the center and nobody's forcing him to move away from the basket, he's a big-time blocks guy and, better rebounder than 6. And then the other Vooch corollary is Aaron Gordon, because when Vooch was out for a couple of ball games, Aaron popped off for 33 points. When he's in there, Vooch, I should say, Gordon's been atrocious. He's a top 200 guy right now. That's a big, big sweep from one guy being in the lineup.
It's rough right now for Aaron Gordon owners, myself included, and he's even looked bad when on the floor. I think it's gotten to his head, and players are pretty human in basketball. And it's not like football where, it's like kind of an action, you don't think quite as much sport. I think these guys are prone to slumps like baseball players are. And when they aren't getting minutes and they aren't getting recognition and they aren't living up to the billing and they start taking the heat, it does seep into things like their defense. His defense was really bad last night. And it's, this is what you're kind of dealing with a club that's got too many, big men. So the Magic have to weigh in their head this wanton desire to maybe compete for a playoff spot at 13 and 18. They're in the ballpark. Frank Vogel has them playing well. That's the other thing about this. Serge Ibaka, for as much grief as we give him around here, he's playing well. He got 23 and 10. He was efficient, 10 of 18 with 3 trays, 1 block, no steals.
But that's just an indictment of the middle of the Eastern Conference more than anything.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, what are you trying to do if you're the Magic? Are you trying to, develop players that may or may not be there? Are you going to try to keep these 4 together? I don't think that's the plan.
Are you really selling to your fans that we're going to be a sub 500 playoff team and that's something that they should get excited about? Because that's sort of a weird... That's tough, man. Kudos to that marketing department if they can pull it off.
I'm actually for teams not tanking. I think that you can build character through playoff appearances. And so I'm all right with this kind of, if you're going to go for it. But I just don't like the idea that it's Aaron Gordon that's his development is going to be hindered because these 3 other players have to play. And we know that not all 4 of them will be there next year.
Yeah.
It'll be one of them that's gone. Chances are it'll be Vooch, and they're going to essentially mortgage most of this first part of the season to kind of make it all look right. And that's, you never want a general manager that is fighting for their job, so to speak.
Desperation is a nasty smell.
It is nasty. And so with Ibaka, though, to talk fantasy on Ibaka, I did a little bit of a deep dive last night in his blurb. his percentages are about they're too high, and his 3-pointers are too high. So now is definitely the time to sell high. It's not, we're not even talking about injury risk. He's a top 36 to 48 player right now in 9 and 8 cat leagues. If you could do an even swap for a top 50 guy, that's highway robbery. That's pillaging. That's like the new word.
You do love pillaging because unfortunately it goes hand in hand. The old expression is rape and pillage, and I don't think the first half of that is considered a friendly half.
Yeah, and maybe we may see now. I was thinking about that. Now you got to take off that pillage. Well, let's come up with a new word.
Could we go with pillage, like garbage time, to sort of dress it up a little bit?
No. But we'll think of a better word.
Okay.
I don't like the connotation there. We're gonna go a different direction.
Yeah, we're not like
with that.
We're not taking the women and burning the crops, right? We're doing something.
No, we don't want to make those jokes. And but with Ibaka, if you could get a top 50 guy, that is completely 100%. Go do it right now, no questions asked. Thank me later. And with Gordon, there's a big decision here. Do you drop? Do you hold? Do you buy low?
Yeah, what do you do with Aaron Gordon right now?
The next, the first 40 games will be way worse than the next 40, games. It's just, I cannot, if it happens the way that it's currently going, I'd be shocked. I said last year that Gordon wasn't worth the ROI. This year, it would be shocking if he's not worth the ROI. So I'm still on board. I think what are we talking about here? About 3 games ago, we did a blurb. We said we got to look at Aaron Gordon in about 5 to 10 games and make a hard decision. And then he went out and he had his big game. And then, we've seen this since. I think he's got about 2 more games. Probably this one isn't the best one to measure with because it's Christmas Day or pre-Christmas Day. On the other side of the break, a lot of times teams will use these unofficial markers as like internal switches, so to speak, where they go, okay, you know what? Hey, it's been fun, but now we got to let Aaron Gordon go do his thing.
Yeah, we are talking about someone who is pretty clearly in the top 4 in the league in just sheer athleticism. So how can you really shelve someone like that for a whole year? Not to say that it won't happen, but it seems sort of brain deadery to not unleash a beast if you have one.
And Vogel's making him earn it, and that's what coaches do. So I mean, he's got to have to bring it together, and then at the same time, he's going to have some help from above because they're probably just fine, playing Vooch's 27 minutes, and he's getting his 10 points, 5 boards, 6 assists. So they can then go say, hey, look, he's having a productive season. He's not playing as many minutes. He'll play more minutes for you, and treat him like a front line big in the NBA.
I just hate the fact that Aaron Gordon took the same number of shots as Jeff Green. That's a travesty of money.
And that's the thing. Jeff Green is the thing that's getting in people's craw in Orlando. He has some, he'll outplay Gordon on a quarter of the nights, but really, is he that much better than Aaron Gordon that he should be getting the minutes? And the answer is no.
No, not at all. What about over on the other side of that one? We got good Kyle O'Quinn again because we're sort of getting this it's bouncing a little bit. He'll have a pretty horrible game. He'll have a marginal game, and then he'll pop off for 14, 16, and 5. And the next time out, he might play 17 minutes and have 4 points and 5 rebounds. And he's starting to look like that guy where you just have to close your eyes and look at him at the end of a month.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. 14 and 16 and 5, you can't argue with that. You can't argue with late round value in his limited 17 some odd minutes per game. And I don't think he's ever going to get more than 25 minutes per game. I mean, if say Noah does get hurt and then they're looking at, okay, we got this big open spot, I think it's Willie Hernan-Gomez that's going to get in there for 24, and then O'Quinn would get 24 on his own or some variation of that. So you're really just talking about, can he be a late round guy for me, and can he also give me some top 75 upside? The answer is yes to both, but we're just never going to know. Like, it is as pure of a risk, and it would almost be unwise to predict unless you know Jeff Hornacek and you can get in there and say, hey, Jeff, are you going to play this guy? Yes. Okay, great. Now I know what he's going to give me.
Tonight, I'm running him out there. Great.
But beyond that, we have no idea of how this is going to go. I mean, but he checks all the boxes. Upside, yes. Does he produce across multiple categories? Yes, he does all these things for you. So I think he should be owned in most 12-team leagues.
Yeah. Lakers, Miami. We're actually starting to see a fewer guys get more minutes for Los Angeles lately. It's not obvious. It's not back-breakingly large numbers, but Nick Young, Luol Deng, D'Angelo Russell, and Brandon Ingram all played 30-plus minutes in their game. It was a loss, mind you. Larry Nance is out and Julius Randle's out, and that plays a role in it. Lou Williams, by the way, also had 28 minutes. But some of these guys are starting to settle in a little bit. And we heard some quotes from Luol Deng that he's feeling a little bit more comfortable. Are the Lakers' assets feeling at all safer to you lately? Because it seems like maybe there's a little bit of consistency to be had.
That's exactly right. I mean, you kind of know what you're going to get out of them, and that's all you ask for really in fantasy. So like Lou Williams is a stud. He's going to get you these big scoring nights and get you big free throw numbers, 8 of 8 last night and 27 points. He'll get you the threes, obviously. I'm really looking. I want to see what they can get for him in a trade. Like, he really doesn't have any business on this squad beyond, the trade deadline this year. You've got an excess of guards that you want to develop. His contract is extremely friendly, and him in the playoffs for a good team would be a thrill to watch. So, I mean, I almost wonder, can they get like a mid-first round pick for the guy?
That's good. He's pretty good.
I mean, you saw Jeff Green go for a late first rounder. You saw Markieff Morris go for a mid-first rounder. I mean, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that Lou Williams would be a better match given his contract and what he can give you.
And his personality. He seems like he's a likable guy.
He's a great team guy, and the Lakers love him. To me, I can see them wanting to keep him at that contract. They could be pretty picky about this, but that's a good asset. So I'd be watching Lou Williams to see if, somebody like the Cavs, I don't know how they would work it out. I know they have a trade exception. So
yeah, with J.R. Smith out. Although, how badly do you want their first round pick? Because it ain't going to be mid round.
Well, no, it won't be. That's why you get a third team involved. But like the only downside to the Cavs is that you've got Kyrie, Lou, and that kind of a pairing in the backcourt would be trouble.
Pretty small
in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, the only guy that's losing right now is Jordan Clarkson. Clarkson is a pretty consistent fantasy asset, and you'd expect him to bounce back whenever, they decide to go young in LA. But Nick Young, he's doing his thing. You just ride that till the wheels fall off. Brandon Ingram, for the next 2 to 3 weeks, he won't produce, but after that, he will. So it's a really clear hold position. Pick him up if he gets dropped. I know his numbers sometimes look really bad, but he'll be good. He'll be a late round guy, starting from about 3 weeks from now. Timothy Mozgov showed up last night. He actually looked good too. 14 and 6 with a block. He's not anywhere near standard league value right now, but as Nance is out, that really opens things up, because Thomas Robinson, who's going to be probably the random stat line of the night tonight, 8 and 12 with the block, he is not the answer. He's not going to revitalize his career in LA. You just kind of have a loss of you have no big men. And so Mozgov will come in there and possibly fill that hole. So if you're in a need for a big man, just keep one eye on him and see how it goes. And then Luol Deng's a must-own guy. Right now he's slotted in, and that's going to be almost like printing money as for a late rounder.
He's been very consistent lately. The Miami side, they scored 115 points, so this obviously made for some pretty juicy stat lines. But we've talked about James Johnson, we've talked about Tyler Johnson, we've talked about Josh Richardson, who it seemed he's struggling right now. In terms of this Miami side, because they're still waiting on Dion Waiters to get back. Hassan Whiteside, obvious. Goran Dragic, obvious. Tyler Johnson, obvious these days. He's been rolling. James Johnson, he's been decent. He sort of bounces in and out of relevancy. Justice Winslow and Josh Richardson are the two that I actually want to focus on today's show, because Winslow finally made more than half of his shots, and his line was colossal. But therein lies sort of the Justice's fallacy, because how many times is he really going to make 63% of his shots? This is that moment where you're like, okay, I got it. I got him on the perfect night. Now what do I do with him?
I think the wrist injury was a big deal, and it's with wrist injuries, you don't know how long they have been in play, and they can absolutely wreck a basketball player's efficiency. Shooting 35% basically heading into this return, and that's terrible. And one thing's interesting is when you get Dragic and Richardson and Tyler Johnson on the floor together, and you put Winslow at the 4, he doesn't have to shoot quite as much. This is already a small lineup. Josh McRoberts he can shoot. Whiteside's fancying himself as a shooter, but haha. But they're like, he doesn't have to shoot. He used to be primarily a catch and shoot 3-point guy last year. This isn't the case. I think he can be a drive and try to get to the foul line guy. He's never going to be a great shooter, but I think the shooting woes are going to kind of rebound back. And then the rest of I play for the Miami Heat and I'm going to get 42 minutes no matter what, that's going to kick in. And that's what you're banking on as far as his value. He's a must-own guy in my book. Even if he's not good this year, he'll get top 150 per game value. And then playing every day, he will be a late-round guy for you that you put in your lineup during 4-game weeks. But I think he could be better than that. I think he could be a top 100 guy pretty easily. And then that he's going to play on it. And when he's healthy, there's no question about is he going to get minutes because they just don't have anybody to play there. So that's part of the allure with guys like him and Richardson. And Richardson will be fine. I think he's just trying to figure out how to get his legs underneath him. The knee injury was a pretty big deal. Having an ankle and a wrist attached to that as well. I'm going to give him a pass for his slow play. Definitely a must-own guy. And in our paid products where people ask me questions directly, I'm literally telling them they're not allowed to move on from Josh Richardson. I forbid them. I will cut them off, and I will not let them pay us anymore if they make this move. And by the way, you should check out that product and also rate and review our podcast. We would be very happy if you did that.
Yeah, Aaron, we got one more game on the docket, and there were some injuries involved in it. And before we get to that, it feels like a pretty good break time in the show, right? Tell me a little bit more, Mr. Bruski, about how someone can get you on a daily basis and quite physically grasp you with their fantasy fingers and answer all of those questions that I'm sure they have.
That sounds scary, but you can get me at the Fantasy Pro product that we have over at hoop-ball.com. And basically, you get to ask us questions on a weekly basis. You can pick a package. You can ask 1 question per week. You can ask 7 questions per week. You can get an answer back within 1 hour. You can get an answer back within 4 hours. It's a really good product for those of you that are addicted to fantasy sports. It's a really good product for those of you in DFS, where you have a lot of little quirky questions right before your lineup deadlines. So it's something that we've been working on for the last year. It's been a good product, and we're actually expanding it as we speak. So we're excited to do some of that stuff, as well as get through to the first of the year, because we're going to be unrolling all sorts of new stuff, including new podcasts starring yours truly.
Yeah, that one.
Box scores.
Exciting one. The belly busting Bruski box score breakdown. It is coming, baby.
See, add a word every time. And I have this odd feeling I'm going to have to do the marketing on it, and I'm going to have to come up with a spot for each of those words.
Mm-hmm. I'm expecting a little tiny podcast graphic that has all of those words in it.
I just thought of an idea for that. But speaking of belly, I've been growing a belly here.
Oh, good. Are you going full Don Nelson?
You never go full Don Nelson.
Yeah, thank you. Tip your cap, Aaron. Tip your cap. Nicely done.
I having a conversation with you about, we need to have more tipping of the cap.
No, that wasn't me, but I agree with that sentiment.
I think that, everybody references, I would like to tip my cap to somebody, but we don't actually do enough of it in our daily lives. It's a lot of talk and no action, I would say, out of our populace. If you're going to tip a cap, damn it.
Really do it.
Tip a cap.
Tip the cap. Also, can we tell the kind of amusing story about the first email I ever sent you?
Yeah, Dan didn't remember that his Google account has that. It's like a really famous picture of Don Nelson. He's kind of doing one of these on the sidelines. He had a rough night the night before, and he's just stretching it out. He's probably just waking up in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. And the belly, it's a good belly. It's a belly that's showing this much belly. It was enough to where I'm sure the arena all went, oh man.
How unfortunate.
So Dan emails me, and he doesn't remember that picture's there. And I'm like, the minute I saw the email, I'm like, sold. I'm in.
Guys, that's the first time that I think it's ever actually worked in my favor. Because I've sent tens of thousands of emails from that account. Many of them, by the way, while working for the Bakersfield Blaze, those were sales emails. So I'm emailing like regional and national marketing people for large fast food chains, and they're looking at it and they're like, "Oh, this guy." They probably didn't even know who Don Nelson was, so they figured this guy's a customer, And I'm like sending this note to the Jack in the Box regional guy, and he's like, "Oh, this dude, I'm gonna send him some extra free tacos. Let's get it going." But yeah, so that was sweet. You reminded me that I had that picture, and in that moment, I kind of thought, man, I should be embarrassed, but I think it worked. It was like 14 years in the making. Did I ever send you, Aaron, the picture of me dressed as Don Nelson in that pose?
No.
I gotta dig that up. That was a good.
But that might be like the coolest thing I've heard for like at least a week.
Yeah, it was one of my crowning achievements in college. We've talked about my Berkeley years a couple times on this show, and what I remember of them. And one of them was that my roommates were marginally athletic. I mean, more than I am. I'm a small, scrawny man who gets injured anytime I do anything that requires physical exertion. But my roommates were not. So they were on an intramural basketball team. And I got tired of like this 2-hour window every week where I just sat at home alone. It was boring for me. I mean, I watched plenty of TV and played enough video games with all those guys. I don't need to do it by myself. So I came to watch a couple of times just to, pass the time. And at some point they were like, you know what, like, just be the team manager, because we have like 14 people on this co-ed intramural team. Nobody ever wants to take themselves out of the ball game. And it's brutal. So just, make our substitutions. We'll listen to you. We won't argue with you. It's cool. And I thought, all right, fine. So I made up an Excel spreadsheet to keep stats too. So I'm like on the sidelines doing the whole thing. And one week I just dressed as Don Nelson. I got a sport coat. I wore a white shirt underneath that was too short. And throughout most of their intramural game, I made sure that I was striking the arms back. I can't do it with holding the microphone. The arms back, belly out, frustrated with the no calls from the officiating crew, and screaming. And there is a photo of me dressed as Don Nelson. It was
okay, so that's like a must-tweet thing that if you have that, I might say you no longer work with Hoopball if you don't tweet that out.
I will find it.
And then two, I know you probably didn't do this, but if you didn't get rip-roaring wasted for that.
No, I mean, we had our substances of choice, and it was more of a mellowing substance. So I passed.
Wait. Is this a Steve Kerr moment? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, I had back pain, man. My back hurt. I had
what stuff happened?
I had glaucoma. Is that the right one? No.
Yeah. That's the right one. Glaucoma.
Yeah, I was suffering from mild 19-year-old glaucoma. That was a big problem.
Doctor, I have glaucoma. Glaucoma? It's glaucoma, right?
Right. It's intraocular pressure. I feel pressure from my eyeballs coming out, and there's only one thing that can be done, and it's to dress as Don Nelson and go,
son, you're dressed like Don Nelson at a doctor's appointment.
We used to also joke, by the way, that Don's entire family was a tree of people all named Don Nelson, and that every generation they just added an N. So it was like Don Nelson, and then Don Nelson. And so now we're at like 4 N's, right? Isn't
that's what happens when you're like writing down the name and you're like Don.
Yeah, you're passing out and doing it.
That's not an N. Oh, is that an N? No, that's not an N either. But okay, we'll just add another N.
It's just a squiggly line is what it is. Where
is this kid mine? This kid's not. All kidding. Don is like he's like a part of the family. It feels like in my house where we're all Warriors fans. I've lost my fandom as a media member, but it's all good.
I will tweet that photo out if I can. I found this Excel spreadsheet of the scoring that I did. So if I can find that, surely I can find the photo of me in the Don Nelson pose. And so that's coming out. And by the way, if everybody wants to see that photo, because I know you're listening, I know you're out there, I only ask one thing of all of you fine listeners, and that is to pull up the podcast on your mobile device and give us a reason. And that's how it comes full circle. Larry David moment.
Is that how you're shilling for the cast?
Yep.
Is a Don Nelson story?
A Don Nelson
back
story.
To Berkeley of all places.
I am shameless. I do not have shame, as evidenced by the fact that I dressed as Don Nelson, not on Halloween. This was just like Wednesday. It's Wednesday. Dressed as Don Nelson. I didn't have a cigar or anything to bring with me, but those were good times. Okay, the last game from Thursday night was a good one, actually, although it did involve an injury to Chris Paul. So the Clippers look like their playoff iteration of themselves from last year. No Blake, no Chris, and they call him day-to-day, but we all know hamstrings take a little bit of time. Why rush him back? You're going to be a top 4 seed in the West, maybe top 5 if he misses 3 weeks or something. But, I don't expect to see him play before Christmas, right? I mean, why play him if he's not 100%?
I don't think you play him tonight against the Mavs. I mean, that makes no sense unless he's truly ready to go. And he'll if he's truly ready to go, he'll say that. He'll be like, I want to play. They might still hold him out.
Wise to.
I mean, they'd be wise to because they don't have Blake Griffin. They need to rest him whenever possible. I don't think that that was terrible news for owners to see that. And even like Christmas Day is kind of a rough.
Yeah, the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, why play him against the Lakers? I know there'll be pressure for him to play, from all parties involved. But you know what? When it comes down to it, I think people that have been in the league long enough, they know that the Christmas Day games are great to talk about before Christmas. But by the time you get to that night game, everybody's like, I don't give a rat's ass about this.
There was always Portland involved in the past. I never watched that game. Not because I dislike Portland, but it's the night game. Nobody's paying attention by then.
No, and it's not a big deal. For the players are more like, I've been with my family in the morning and I'm now going to this game. I've eaten too much. It's quiet inside the building. Like it's weird. It's always the tonight's games and the Christmas Day games and even the game on the other side. Yep. It's always, I think if you're in DFS, you just want to make a ton of contrarian plays. Pick a lineup that makes no sense whatsoever that you'd never, ever pick. You just go in there. You're like, oh, Marco Bellinelli, 50 points.
Boom. Marco.
Lock it.
And you got you have a similar thing coming into the All-Star break. Less so coming out of the break, but going into it, you often see those teams finishing up on the road. Really, I mean, if you can get half of their keister involved in that ball game, that's a pretty big win. I mean, you see some pretty ugly road performances going into the All-Star break.
It's not even really, you want to blame the players. Oh, they should always be ready. But, it's everybody that they're in contact with. It's the people in PR. It's the people that, kind of handle everything in the locker room. Everybody's got one foot out the door. It's impossible to escape that. The best of the best locker rooms can insulate against that. But even they will have trouble on nights like this.
Yeah, it's still just one game, and that, it's senioritis affects all of us in some capacity. So the thing I was looking up last night when I saw Chris Paul went down was, all right, well, we have actual precedent on this of the Clippers without Chris Paul and without Blake Griffin. And it was actually Jamal Crawford who was the guy who took a whole bunch of shots last year to try to keep that team in what was basically a lost cause in the postseason. That worked out, by the way, really well for your playoff league, our Fantrax league, because you were loaded up with Trailblazers that all should have been gone a series earlier.
I don't want to. You don't try to like pad your stats here, Dan.
I did win that league.
I know, but you're the only reason you win that league is because Draymond Green kicked another man in the nuts one too many times.
It was all evening out because you got an extra series out of your like 4 Portland Trailblazers.
See, there was no purpose for this discussion except to kind of validate your win, which really is not a validated win. When in the history of the NBA has a team lost, I mean, they were up 3-1, and then another man kicked another man in the nuts, and then they lost. And then I lose my playoff league as a result of all the additional games. That's
like NBA history right there. That every year that happens at least one time.
I'm beside myself, and I call bunk.
You're calling shenanigans on my playoff victory?
Well, only because you got to bring up the history of the Blazers and this and that.
I drafted exclusively guys who I thought would make it to the finals, which is why I had a team of like the 8th and 9th guys off the bench for the Cavs and the Warriors, and it ended up working out.
It's a good strategy. I've seen that, and we'll talk about playoff leagues later in the year. But that strategy is very wise.
So tell me, we have a slightly better iteration of Austin Rivers this year. We have Mo Buckets available for the Clippers. Those are two things that are a little bit different from where they were in the playoffs when Blake and Paul went down last year. Do we see that jump over? Because last night, Wesley Johnson actually took 11 shots. But Jamal Crawford did score 11 points and played a lot of minutes when Paul went down. So do we roll with precedent or do we make some adjustments to it?
No, you go with Raymond Felton.
Big Ray Ray.
Ray Ray is your safe play. Like, you can almost put it into stone. 11 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, a couple threes, and a steal. And that's good for you on whether we're talking tonight on a busy night with 14 games or if we're talking on Christmas Day. I think that you're confident in that production, but then you're really trying to figure out which of the two, Rivers or Crawford, is going to get loose. And Crawford is the upside guy. And he's the upside guy, I think, because his stat set doesn't have quite as many holes as Austin does. For whatever reason, Austin can't – I mean, we know neither of them steal or block, but he goes empty in, like, rebounds or even assists more often than Crawford. Crawford's going to get you – he's not a big rebounder, obviously, but he's going to get you 3 or 4 assists. He's going to get to the foul line. He's a little bit less empty, and he's still got more kind of scoring potential than Rivers does if you say all things are equal. So, yeah, I like Crawford as my upside play, Felton as my, that's going to happen play, and then Mo Buckets as the feel-good play. Because everybody feels good when Mo Buckets gets out there.
That is true.
And hits a bucket. I mean, if we were playing on a 7-foot rim and we couldn't dunk, that would be like the equivalent of Mo Buckets. And you just got to root for guys like that who are 6'10" and can't dunk a basketball.
All right, so tell me this. We've got a 14-game card on Friday, so I'm not going to ask you for a best bet, and I'm not going to ask you to tell me what you're watching tonight because it's simply too much. And to say everything would be accurate, but also not terribly helpful. So let's see if we can't bang out a few of the questions from the chat room instead. We jump straight to that?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, so we're not going to get to all of them today, folks, because frankly, we've gotten to all of them in the past, and that led to about a 90-minute show, which is 30 minutes longer than we try to keep this thing. So we're going to hit some of the top ones, and if you don't get your question answered, feel free to hit us up on Twitter. Feel free to post it in the Hoopball forum. That's always available for you. And if you want it answered immediately, Aaron already told you, go click on that premium tab, get yourself a Hoopball subscription. So I got to go with Ben's question because he was first. You can never ignore the first question on a board. Should I drop Markieff Morris for Justice Winslow?
Yeah. No. God, it's so close.
Wait, I heard yeah and no.
Yeah, no, it's close because here's the thing. Morris is a safe top 80 play, but Winslow, he can be more by virtue of the bad Miami depth. So, I mean, if you want to climb higher, if you want to listen to some Creed and be taken higher.
Oh God.
Then you go with the Winslow pick. But, Markieff is pretty safe where he's at.
Can we pick Winslow and not listen to Creed? Is that an option?
No. If you pick Winslow, you got to turn on some Creed.
Oh.
Get in the mood, whatever that mood may be.
What mood are we talking about here?
It's, you're getting taken higher. It could be religious. It could be something else. I don't know.
Yeah, I chose different songs for that if we want to talk about my Don Nelson night again. Avery Bradley is one side of a trade, and Jabari Parker / Jahlil Okafor is the other side of the trade. I mean, I'm always looking at the best player available, right?
Yeah, because Okafor is a dead asset in that trade, and then the other piece of that was
Jabari Parker for Avery.
Yeah, I mean, I like Parker. He's doing well this year. He's like a top 65 level. But yeah, Bradley with a top 50 floor. I think that you're better off just kind of hanging on with Bradley. I don't think Parker can really crack the Giannis sort of usage, whatever you call it, black hole vortex.
We're gonna call it the firewall.
I watched Giannis run like clear across the court. Parker's completely in control of the situation. He's got the ball. He's got a one-on-one matchup. That's great. And Giannis ran over the court like it was a 12-year-old basketball game and was like, come give me the ball. Give me the ball. And I was like, really, dude? Like, he's pretty
okay.
good. He's a good basketball player. So yeah, I don't think that's ending there. I'm gonna take Bradley.
So I'm going to jump over some of these rather open-ended questions that do require us to just kind of guess a little bit. And we'll jump straight to Roderick de Guzman's question. Second half targets for this year. You got one or two at that kind of on the tip of your tongue ready to go?
Second half targets. Not off the tip of my tongue. I'm going to look at a team list and it'll spur my memory here. You said these were not open-ended. That's as open-ended as it gets.
Well, I mean, the other ones are just kind of guessing as to when we think guys are going to
I mean, I've talked about him a lot, Jeremy Lamb. I mean, he's not in your standard leagues. He's not somebody that's like a must-own guy. I just think that when you look at that team and you go, okay, up and down the roster, all of them are injury risks. This guy has a path to minutes. He needs 24 minutes to be fantasy relevant. And I could see him at the end of the year getting 25, 26, 27 minutes really easily. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist goes down. Marco Bellinelli is not a spring chicken. Up and down that lineup, there's guys that could be out. So he'd be a target for sure. And Kelly Oubre, same boat. Bradley Beal, he goes down. All of a sudden, the touches open up. The minutes are already there. Right now, he's not getting the touches. 2 to 3 weeks from now, he'll be productive. And post All-Star break, I think he'll be a guy. It's kind of like Otto Porter light.
So the questions that I'm jumping over, I should clarify, are ones that are either us guessing. So like, will somebody come back, or basically, yeah, that. So us guessing on injuries. We're not doctors. We're not with the team. So we're going to skip over those for now. We're also going to skip over a couple of the questions that are hyper specific. Like for your individual team, I have, a 14 category, 12 team head-to-head league. Here's the guys that I'm looking at, and here's who I have. That's the type of stuff that we can take a look at either on Twitter or in the Hoopball forum or via the premium membership. I want to try to keep the questions here on this show really more things that can impact a lot of teams simultaneously. So with that in mind, I'm going to jump to West Ender's question about Yusuf Nurkic. Aaron, where do you see him headed the rest of this year?
It's a bad spot because Jokic fever is at the peak levels there in Denver. I don't think there's like any doubt about it anymore. I mean, it's local write-ups, it's national write-ups, it's Coach Malone saying everything that you want to hear if you're a Jokic owner. But if you're a Nurkic owner, you're like, wait, what about me? And the problem is Fareed's going to play center in a lot of those lineups, and Nurk is kind of in that funk where he's kind of like Aaron Gordon. He's not getting the minutes, and when he was getting the minutes, we've talked about a million times on this show, he's not getting the love from his point guards. Now, I do think that the fact that they're playing better is going to help him. He's a fine stash. Don't discount him as a stash. But if you're looking to say, hey, am I going to get anything out of this guy in the next 2 weeks? I think the answer is no. They're still looking for a trade. I don't think that's going to happen in the next week here. I mean, maybe sometimes some stuff happens over the Christmas break, but not really. I just think you got to look at him as a pure stash. And I do think, come like February, say like All-Star, the All-Star deadline, I think he'll be back to being a top kind of 125-ish guy with a whole lot of upside beyond that. That's the only way you can look at him. I don't know if that's enough ROI to hold him right now. That's kind of a far way away. So I'd hate to drop him, but there is an argument that can be made, but he is still a viable stash.
What about Greg Monroe?
I think he's a must-own guy. I think that they've figured it out in Milwaukee. He's figured it out kind of where he fits in. It's weird to say that Jason Kidd's rotations are now pretty predictable, but that's the way it feels. And he's all upside. If he keeps up this level of production, imagine what he's going to do if he gets traded and goes somewhere like New Orleans. And that trade that hasn't been made, to me, is mind-blowing. Like, they got to just get on that. Maybe there's something about Greg Monroe we don't know, but he would be a nice little compliment to Anthony Davis and add a much-needed function of ball movement and front court play that they haven't had. And he wants to be there. That's the other thing. So you would be in a great spot as a fantasy owner if he gets to be a top 50 asset, and you've been getting good top 100 production out of him anyway.
Yep. Two more questions about guys in particular. And again, to those of you in the chat room who posted questions, thank you. But again, we're trying to keep this show right around that 1 hour mark, give or take a couple of minutes. So for the extremely specific questions, the questions about trades that are again are really tailored to your specific team. We are not going to be answering those live on air, but you can get at us at Dan Baspers, at Aaron Bruski on Twitter. The Hoopball form is also available. And so, again, I do apologize one more time, but we're going to get to those ones that are applicable for everybody. Thoughts on Nikola Mirotic, because he's been kind of bouncing back a little bit lately after hitting the doghouse hard about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think you just take that week or two and just kind of forget it ever happened. And then he's really more or less in the same spot that he's been. He's like a top 150, top 125 guy that might not ever cash into that upside. And that's kind of what we're seeing there is yeah, there's ways that this could all work out for him. I mean, Taj Gibson has a lot of Tibbs minutes, and he's definitely a banged up player. You've got aging players all up and down the roster and not a lot of depth. So you can kind of count the ways that he could become relevant, but I don't know that you're counting on him to be more. He's definitely miscast as an upside guy. I think his upside, it shows itself, but I don't think he's good enough as a player to be the upside guy that people have made him out to be. Definitely not the early round guy that some guys made him out to be last year. He's more of a top 75 at best asset.
And Prime T, by the way, I should mention that question about Mirotic was asked by someone with the screen name No Jokic.
I know who that is, and that's it's a play on no joke.
No joke.
It's not an anti-Jokic stance he's taking. He's very much pro Jokic, if you ask him.
So
if you get to know the chat room, Dan, you would know these things.
I'm just reading it, man, and that's a why. So it's no Jokic, pro Jokic.
Exactly.
Okay, I gotcha. Prime T says, "What's the weekly update from Aaron Bruski on Danny Green? He's been better lately."
That's exactly right. Danny Green is a must-own guy in 12-team leagues, and that's pretty wild to report after his start. I didn't think he was going to hold on. That was just kind of like my gut instinct. The numbers told me you got to hold him, and he's slowly improving on what was previously a must-hold position. So he's a top 100-ish guy right now in 9-cat leagues. He's a little bit worse in 8-cat leagues, but he's getting through the trouble spots. And that's, he's got a lot of upside if things break the right way for him. I don't think that we're going to see breakout Danny Green this year, but we might see top 80 Danny Green.
That's not bad.
Yeah, that'll work.
And it does seem like he tends to perform better in their bigger ball games. Is that at all a coincidence?
Maybe. I don't. It might be something.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, like there was that Chicago game that I think was televised, and he had a solid performance there. Houston and Clippers, those are both. I think those are both national games lately, and he's played well. And then there was one in there against Boston where he wasn't so good.
There was a comment by Kawhi that I thought rang true for Danny Green. Is he said that he's really trying to figure out how to deal with double teams, and he said that you can't practice it. I mean, you can kind of, but like in a game with that kind of ferocity, it's something that he said that he's had a hard time adjusting to. And I think once he figures that out and he starts to move the ball on a string, then you start to see Danny Green do Danny Green things, because that was the strength of Danny Green when he was a top 50 guy. He played with the guys where the ball was zipping around the pattern and he got all these open threes. It's just not the case with Aldridge and Kawhi Leonard. But if they start to figure it out, then you get your old Danny Green back.
Yeah, over the last week, and obviously this is a small sample size, but he's a top 40 guy in 3 basketball games. He's got 3 3-pointers, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, about a steal and a half, 0.7 blocks, 1 turnover on 52% shooting, which, obviously very small sample size, and he's not going to shoot 52% for a season. But I actually don't know that there was a week last year where he shot 52%. So that's got to be somewhat of a little bit of a confidence boost, if nothing else, right?
Oh, absolutely. And these shooting slumps for shooting guards, they do last half seasons or even hot streaks. So like I said, must own, and he's available everywhere. So, yep. I mean, if you got space on your roster, he's not like a drop anybody on your roster guy, but if you've got somebody that's, say, under top 125, by all means, pull the trigger.
you got to have that spot at the end of your roster that's available for pickups like this. I feel like everybody's doing themselves a disservice if they're just locked in and don't make any moves. Plus, it's more fun to get shuttle guys on and off your team. Where would I be over the last 3 years if I hadn't picked up and dropped John Henson 32 times? That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. I want to once again remind the folks in the chat room that if you asked a question that was extremely specific, feel free to copy and paste that over to the Hoopball forum. We'll take a look at that, or hit us up on Twitter. For everybody that continues to enjoy the show, please, please, please do subscribe. Give us a rating. I know it's Christmas time, so it's sort of a weird time, but the ratings, they are flowing in lately, so thank you for that as well. And as I say every day, I will say it again, it is currency to us. It is like payment. So if you like what you're getting, you don't have to actually pay anything. Drop a rating. That's like handing us millions of dollars. It's like handing us a satchel with a big dollar sign on it, and we can swim in our money bin. I didn't wear that shirt this time, but I will. I will.
Hey, now you're flirting with them. I like it. Give us a rating. Damn it.
I'll wear my DuckTales shirt. I'm going to find that Don Nelson photo. If that doesn't seal the deal on a rating, I don't know what will. So again, thank you, everybody.
You know what? I actually want to hold people ransom. You don't get the picture without the ratings.
Yeah, tweet at us. Let us know you've done it, by the way. That'll be a nice way, because right now it's like, well, how do you even know?
I want 5 ratings at least before I'll authorize the Don Nelson shirt.
Bruski's the boss, man. So you guys got to drop in a couple of stars at least. He didn't say it had to be a 5-star rating, but we'd certainly appreciate it.
If you could write in the ratings, if you could just say, I'm giving this rating so I can see Dan dressed like Don Nelson.
But wait, this is like 20-year-old Dan. So this is 13 years ago, dressed as Don Nelson. Mind you, I'm still a thin man. You can see it in the video feed. I was really thin back then. So it required some significant pillow work to make this costume fit. It was hard work. We really put our minds to things in college. Everything except schoolwork. He's Aaron Bruski, the founder of Hoopball. I'm Dan Bespris. Another week of Fantasy NBA Today in the books. Thank you to everybody who continues to listen, continues to spread the Hoopball gospel. We appreciate every single thing that you guys do. Every click on the website, every listen here on the podcast. We know it's happening, and we are most appreciative. From both of us, Merry Christmas, everyone. We'll talk to you on the other side. The 26th, we'll be back. I believe that's Monday, right? We will talk about the Christmas games. Aaron and I will have our weekly lineup show. Aaron, are you doing the waiver show on Christmas Day? That seems a foolish gambit.
No waiver show on Christmas Day. Thank you for bringing that up. If there is a way, there's a travel schedule that's involved. And so if I can sneak it in somehow, I will try to do it. But as of right now, with the way the travel schedule is set up, no waiver wire show. But like I said, I'm going to try to sneak it in. No promises, but I will try. It's
Christmas. I think everybody can understand. The only things you can get on Christmas are movies and Chinese food. We know that to be true. So again, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. I believe Hanukkah starts this weekend as well. So happy Hanukkah. Light the Hanukkah, make a wish, get your pair of socks. I also know how that works. And we'll talk to you on the 26th. I'll be back with a little lightning round action here on Fantasy NBA Today. Have a great weekend, folks.